There is a quiet difference between people who work hard and people who lead. On the surface, they may look the same. Both show up. Both put in effort. Both stay busy. But internally, they are operating from completely different places. One is reacting to tasks. The other is directing purpose. Most people are taught how to work, not how to lead. They are trained to complete what's assigned, respond quickly, and stay occupied. And while that can produce short-term results, it rarely produces long-term impact. Because working harder inside someone else's framework does not automatically create growth. Leadership does. Working like a leader does not require a title. It requires a mindset shift. A worker wakes up asking what needs to be done. A leader wakes up asking what actually matters. That single distinction changes how energy is spent, how decisions are made, and how progress feels. Workers stay busy. Leaders stay aligned. Busyness feels productive, but it often hides a lack of direction. Many people work non-stop yet feel stuck. They answer emails, attend meetings, check boxes, and collapse at the end of the day, wondering why nothing meaningful moved forward. The problem is not effort. It's orientation. Leadership begins with intention. When you work like a leader, you stop letting urgency decide your priorities. You understand that not everything loud is important, and not everything important is loud. You choose focus over frenzy. You move deliberately, even when the environment pushes speed. This immediately changes how work feels. You are no longer drowning in tasks. You are navigating purpose. Workers often feel pressured because they tie their value to output. The more they do, the more valuable they feel. This creates anxiety, overcommitment, and burnout. Leaders separate worth from volume. They measure success by impact, not exhaustion. Impact requires thinking, and thinking requires space. One of the biggest differences between working like a worker and working like a leader is how time is treated. Workers fill time. Leaders protect it. Workers react to their calendars. Leaders design them. Workers feel guilty for pausing. Leaders understand that pause is where clarity lives. When you begin to work like a leader, you stop apologizing for thinking. You stop feeling lazy for stepping back. You understand that decisions made in clarity save hours of correction later. This is not avoidance. This is strategy. Leadership also changes how you relate to responsibility. Workers carry responsibility like weight. Leaders carry it like direction. Workers feel burdened by what they must do. Leaders feel anchored by what they choose to take ownership of. Ownership creates power. When you own outcomes instead of just tasks, you start seeing patterns. You stop asking how to finish something and start asking why it exists. That question alone elevates your thinking. Why changes behavior W? Why creates alignment? Another major shift happens in how you respond to problems. Workers see problems as interruptions. Leaders see them as signals. Workers want problems removed quickly. Leaders want them understood. Understanding leads to better solutions. This doesn't mean leaders move slowly. It means they move precisely. They don't patch symptoms and move on. They address root causes. That patience saves time long term. Working like a leader also changes communication. Workers speak to report. Leaders speak to influence. Workers focus on what happened. Leaders focus on what it means. Meaning moves people. When you work like a leader, you become intentional with words. You don't talk just to fill silence. You don't explain excessively. You communicate direction, not just information. This creates trust. People trust those who think clearly. They follow those who provide direction, not just data. Another important difference is how feedback is handled. Workers often take feedback personally because they tie identity to performance. Leaders detach identity from outcome. They treat feedback as information, not judgment. This emotional distance is powerful. It allows leaders to improve without collapsing, to adjust without shame, to grow without fear. That resilience separates those who stagnate from those who evolve. Working like a leader also reshapes how you approach growth. Workers wait to be trained. Leaders train themselves. Workers wait for permission. Leaders prepare in advance. Preparation creates opportunity. When opportunity appears, leaders are ready. Not because they are lucky, but because they anticipated growth before it was required. They invested in thinking, learning, and reflecting when no one demanded it. This habit compounds. Another shift happens in how pressure is experienced. Workers feel pressure as threat. Leaders feel it as responsibility. Threat triggers fear. Responsibility triggers focus. Focus performs better under pressure. This is why leaders appear calm in chaos. Not because they don't care, but because they are oriented. They know what matters. They know what doesn't. They don't waste energy panicking about everything. They allocate attention intentionally. Working like a leader also means you stop outsourcing decisions. Workers often wait for direction. Leaders create it. Even in environments with hierarchy, leadership shows up through initiative. Initiative is not rebellion, it is ownership. You don't need authority to think ahead. You don't need permission to care about outcomes. You don't need a title to operate with intention. This mindset makes you valuable. Value does not come from how replaceable your tasks are. It comes from how clearly you think, how reliably you act, and how well you align effort with purpose. Another distinction appears in how failure is handled. Workers fear failure because it threatens security. Leaders accept failure as part of progress. They don't romanticize it, but they don't avoid it either. Avoiding failure limits growth. When you work like a leader, you experiment thoughtfully. You take calculated risks. You learn quickly. You adapt. You don't cling to what's safe if it's no longer effective. Adaptability is leadership. Another important difference is how energy is managed. Workers spend energy reacting. Leaders invest energy intentionally. Workers feel drained because they never choose where energy goes. Leaders feel tired but fulfilled because energy is aligned with meaning. Meaning sustains effort longer than obligation ever could. Working like a leader also reshapes how you see success. Success is no longer about being busy or being praised. It's about creating momentum. It's about moving the right things forward even when no one is watching. Invisible progress matters. Leaders are comfortable working without applause. They understand that real impact often happens quietly before it becomes visible. They don't need constant validation to stay committed. This internal drive is powerful. As this mindset begins to take hold, you notice changes in how you carry yourself. You are less rushed, more deliberate. You listen more. You speak with clarity. You noticed how they may not be able to explain why they trust you more, but they do. They sense direction. They feel steadiness. They recognize leadership even without a title. Working like a leader it's about deciding what matters and aligning action accordingly. It's about moving from reaction to intention. Life does not suddenly become easier. There are still deadlines, still expectations, still pressure. But you are no longer drowning in it. You are navigating it. You stop working to survive the day. You start working to shape direction. That is the difference. As this way of working becomes familiar, you begin to notice that the biggest shift is internal. Your job may not change overnight. Your role may look the same on paper, but the way you experience your work is fundamentally different. You no longer feel like you are being pulled through the day by demands. You feel like you are guiding yourself through it. That internal leadership changes everything. You stop measuring your days by how exhausted you feel at the end of them. Exhaustion is no longer a badge of honor. You start measuring your days by clarity, by whether your effort was aligned with what mattered most, by whether your actions moved something meaningful forward. This redefinition is freeing. When you work like a leader, you stop mistaking urgency for importance. You recognize that urgency often belongs to other people's priorities, not necessarily to purpose. You learn to pause before responding, not to avoid responsibility, but to choose it deliberately. Deliberate choice creates control. This control shows up in how you structure your time. You stop packing your schedule to feel productive. You leave space to think. You protect moments for reflection, review, and planning. At first, this feels uncomfortable. It can feel like you're doing less. But what you're actually doing is creating leverage. Leverage is what leaders seek. Not more hours, not more effort. Better decisions, better timing, better alignment. One thoughtful decision can save weeks of correction. One clear direction can eliminate dozens of unnecessary tasks. Workers often chase efficiency within chaos. Leaders reduce chaos itself. Another change happens in how you approach conversations. When you work like a leader, you stop entering conversations to defend, justify, or impress. You enter them to understand and to align. You ask better questions. You listen beyond words. This improves outcomes. People respond differently when they feel understood instead of managed. Trust grows. Resistance decreases. Collaboration becomes easier. You're no longer pushing, you're guiding. This also changes how you handle conflict. Workers often avoid conflict or react emotionally to it. Leaders stay present. They don't escalate unnecessarily. They address issues directly, calmly, and early. Early clarity prevents bigger problems later. Working like a leader also changes how you deal with uncertainty. Workers crave certainty before acting. Leaders act with incomplete information, guided by principles instead of guarantees. They don't freeze when answers are unclear. They move forward thoughtfully and adjust as needed. This adaptability is essential. Modern work environments change constantly. Plans shift. Priorities evolve. Those who wait for perfect clarity fall behind. Those who operate with clear principles remain effective even when conditions change. Principles are anchors. Another powerful shift is how you view accountability. Workers often see accountability as something imposed from above. Leaders see it as self-chosen. They hold themselves accountable before anyone else does. Self-accountability builds credibility. When others see that you take ownership without excuses, trust increases. People rely on you. Opportunities expand, not because you asked for them, but because you demonstrated readiness. This is how leadership grows organically. Working like a leader also reshapes how you approach learning. Workers learn what they are told to learn. Leaders learn what they anticipate they will need. They study systems, people, and patterns, not just tasks. This proactive learning creates confidence. Confidence rooted in preparation is calm. It doesn't boast.
It doesn't boast.
It doesn't panic when challenged. It simply responds. Another important distinction is how leaders handle recognition. Workers often seek recognition to feel secure. Leaders appreciate recognition, but don't depend on it. Their motivation comes from alignment, not applause. This independence protects integrity. You don't compromise values for approval. You don't chase visibility at the cost of effectiveness. You focus on impact. Knowing recognition follows contribution, not the other way around. Working like a leader also means you stop over-identifying with your role. You are not just your job title. You are a thinker, a problem solver, a decision maker. This broader identity makes you resilient. If circumstances change, you adapt. Workers often feel lost when roles shift. Leaders reposition themselves. They understand that value comes from mindset, not position. Another subtle but powerful shift happens in how you manage emotions at work. Leaders don't suppress emotions, but they don't let emotions dictate behavior. They acknowledge feelings without surrendering control. Emotional regulation is leadership. When pressure rises, leaders slow down internally. They don't match chaos with chaos. They become steadier as things become more complex. This steadiness influences everyone around them. Calm is contagious. As this mindset takes hold, you begin to notice that your work has more meaning. Not because tasks changed, but because your relationship to them did. You see how your effort fits into a bigger picture. You understand why your work matters. Meaning increases engagement. Engagement fuels consistency. Consistency fuels mastery. Mastery creates influence. This chain begins with mindset, not workload. Working like a leader also changes how you end your days. You are less likely to replay everything obsessively. You are less likely to carry unresolved tension home. You reflect, extract lessons, and release what no longer serves you. This protects your energy. Energy protected today is energy available tomorrow. Another shift occurs in how you approach ambition. Ambition becomes quieter and more focused. You're not chasing everything. You're building something. You choose depth over breadth, quality over quantity. This focus accelerates growth. You stop saying yes to things that dilute your impact. You stop spreading yourself thin. You invest where it counts. This discipline feels empowering, not restrictive. Over time, others begin to respond to you differently. They seek your input. They trust your judgment. They notice your consistency. You may not have asked for leadership, but it finds you. Leadership is recognized before it is titled. This is because leadership is visible in behavior long before it appears in structure. It shows up in how you think, how you decide, and how you respond under pressure. Working like a leader does not mean you stop working hard. It means your effort is intentional, directed, purposeful. You still show up. You still contribute. But you do so from alignment instead of obligation. That difference prevents burnout. Burnout comes from effort without meaning. Leadership restores meaning. As weeks turn into months, this way of working becomes natural. You no longer think about it consciously. You prioritize clearly. You stay grounded. This internal shift compounds.